But I wanted to share, when we went to Denver last July, my mother decided to give me her diamond ring that she's had for a number of years. Our family has never had a lot of money. Now, this is relevant. I know it seems after, blood and smoke and whatever. Our family never had a whole lot of money. So precious jewels for us were the, you're so precious to me kind of thing that we say to our children. That was our precious jewel. But when my paternal grandmother died, she left a couple of heirloom rings. She left a couple of them to me and then this diamond ring to my mother. But the diamond she labeled as no sentimental value. So my mother it was kind of mutual, their kind of not appreciation for one another. But a diamond is a diamond, so my mom was pretty happy about that. So my dad had it reset into a setting that fit her wedding band to make it her own. But my father died less than 2 years later, so she has since reset the ring to her own liking. At any rate, for some reason or another, she wanted me to be able to enjoy it for a while, and the diamond has history, and so does the current setting. And I wanted to honor my mother by keeping it as it was, even though I prefer gold, and she likes the silver, so whatever. It's not important. But I wanted to honor her by keeping it as it was and just had it sized and cleaned a couple of weeks ago. So it's just kind of a fun little thing. My mom's engagement ring was a single pearl, and which is gorgeous, and I just gave it to Samantha on her 25th birthday, so we have this big plan for where these things will go. But this Victorian era amethyst is it's a rose gold filigreed and whatnot, and it was from my great-great-grandmother. So it's been around for a long time, and there's a lot of history in this ring. And then there's this heart-shaped sapphire-studded ring from my grandmother. Each are beautiful in their own right, but are still more precious to me and to us because of their histories and the stories that they carry. You see, my family moved from my extended family, all in New Jersey and now kind of around in that area. And there's some mystery about some of my heritage, so these stories are incredibly important to me. Part of blessing and part of an explanation of who I am, where I come from, our history, our heritage. So today's word of the day is propinquity. Yes, and I got this gorgeous orchid last week that I'm just loving. Propinquity means close kinship or physical nearness. So we did not enjoy propinquity of family, but we quickly developed family with those at the seminary that my dad was attending and in the church where I grew up. And it is propinquity in the close kinship sense of the word that facilitates and nurtures meaningful relationship, the strength that comes from true community, the accountability that brings about transformation, that helps us grow and become more of who we are. The growth we are created to experience. We're made to continue to grow or we die. So today is Reformation Sunday. So if you don't know much about Reformation, the Reformation, it was over 500 years ago that Martin Luther nailed the 95 Theses on the castle church door in Wittenberg, Germany. So that was in 1517. They detailed a call for wholesale reform in the church. But then it wasn't until the Catholic Church's Edict of Worms in 1521 that the schism actually was realized, and Luther and his sympathizers were banned from the church. So they were shoved aside, and so they started a new movement in a way. And of course, as with any kind of movement, there's always history that has led up to it. And so we're not in a vacuum, and it's not ever just one person. But it's Luther that we remember. The crux of Luther's thesis was that we're justified by grace alone, not penances and the workaround of indulgences, by anything that we can pay for. We are saved. Our relationship is made right with God by grace alone. So nearly 200 years after that, John Wesley then submitted some criticism to the Reformation's emphasis on justification by grace, and instead, well, not the by grace part, but insisted we are also sanctified here and now by that same grace. There's this possibility for unity so profound that we cannot help but be like God, walk like Jesus, be empowered by the very Spirit of God. Sanctification, transformation, metanoia in the Greek, a transformational change in one's way of life, a change resulting from repentance and spiritual awareness. Spiritual awareness, listening, hearing what it is that Jesus is doing in you and through the people that are around us, those who are in propinquity with us. Like the egg that becomes the larva, transformed to pupa that manifests artful wings, a butterfly. So we, by sanctifying grace, can be transformed, can manifest as our truest self, God's image bearer, each of us. But first, there's this kind of death, right? The chrysalis, the seed, a death to the false self. The mask we wear to protect the vulnerable inner being, project the person you or others think you should be. And this is what we talked about yesterday about the Enneagram, understanding who we are, and so that we can also listen into really seeing who each other are. So Johann Wolfgang von Goethe said, as long as you do not have experience of this dying and becoming, you are only a troubled guest on this dark earth. If we're not in the process of still growing and becoming who it is that God has made us to be, truly, then we're just troubled guests. We're not being a part of anything. We cannot help other people to grow as well unless we are growing too. Transformation in the spiritual life is experiential and perpetual. It is a verb, an occurrence, an ongoing occurrence. It is not a one and done this side of glory. God tells us through Joel, you shall know that I am in the midst of Israel, and that I, the Lord, am your God, and there is no other. And my people shall never again be put to shame. Then afterward, I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. Even on the male and female slaves in those days, I will pour out my spirit. Jesus came. This has happened. The Spirit of God has been poured out in this place and continues to be poured out. Do we receive it? These portents in the heavens and on the earth, the blood and fire and columns of smoke, we don't see the columns of smoke and the fire and all of that in our vision. But we can see that. We can see the power of the Spirit working in one another and in our community if we are looking, if we have eyes to see. Then everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be those who escape, as the Lord has said, and among the survivors shall be those whom the Lord calls. The prophets over and over again, explained what happens when God is our everything. When God is God alone and we do not look to other people or things or status or whatever, we are transformed. God's very Spirit poured out on us, and we will dream dreams. Are you dreaming dreams? Do you see visions? Do you see a vision of this place in Durand, of our being, the presence of God in Durand? We'll see visions and never, never, ever again be ashamed. Because our very identity is entirely and uniquely God's own. And with shame completely sloughed off, we are afforded the dignity of the divine. So identity answers the question, who am I? While dignity answers the question, what am I worth? This is taken from the Sacred Enneagram. He goes on to say, tragically, most of us start with our sense of identity first, believing that if we build out the mythology of who we think we are, then the more attractive our identity and the more valuable we become. But when we can start with the grace of resting in our dignity, whose we are, what our worth is, when we start with that, then the truth of our own identity is free to be exposed, to be expressed. It's vulnerable. But if we're first working from dignity, whose we are, our worth, we are worth more than a diamond, more than a precious jewel. We're divine. We're image bearers of God. When we help to make things right in the world, we are not just giving things, supplies, clean water, and etc., though that is part of that project. When things are made right by knowing our own worth and seeing the worth of those whom we serve, we are present to them with dignity. Everyone begins to transform. We all do. To have that sense of worth, priceless, more precious than the costliest of stones. But it does require that we die to holding on to anything that we are making God to us. Our things, our money, position, homes, pensions, even our generosity can become a God. So Rick Bernath, our faithful treasurer, has a few words to share on how we can be a part of this project of affording dignity to us and to the people in Durand and beyond. Will you please come, sir?
That's quite a view. Good morning. The church has two problems and there are two plans. First, we need discipleship. This month, $3,000 was taken for savings for insurance and payroll. I don't see this getting better. In less than a few days here, another $3,000 is going to be needed for property insurance. If you were warm in a pew last week, you heard Pastor Nicole speak about discipleship. You could almost feel the warmth of the Holy Spirit, the symbol of the Methodists. Pastor Nicole says Howie's thing is to go around the house saying, you can't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need. Well, that makes sense, but you got to work real hard to get it, or something like that. We need to bring those who recently left and new members here. Just this month, there's so many things that this church has done, I can't mention them all. Most of you are not only in charge of that, but you're probably participating in them. That's why this church needs to be saved. The second problem is the snowbirds. Talking at this time rather than next week, All Souls Day, won't detract from that day, so maybe you'll hear from me again in Communion Sunday in December. With the financial problems the church is experiencing, we can't absorb the loss. Over 3 months, they're gone. As members, you are pledged to give your gifts and talents to this Durand church. This is essential, as we were $10,000 in the hole in March. If you stop for a few months each year, at some point there may not be a church to come back to. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. The reality is that we're living in a new kind of propinquity to our in this world, to our community, because it is no longer just the people that are in the town with us. It is also those who, because so many people are not actually coming to the building of the church. And as Rick said, this place is vital. We do a lot of amazing ministries here. And there needs to be some other ways that we can help to sustain this church as well. Not only certainly having more people in this place, but there are other things that we can do. And one of them is going to where the people are, and the majority are in cyberspace. And we can even reach those who are going to Florida, as well as anybody around the world, which I have actually been in communication with people who have been watching the live stream of this service, as well as going to look at and watch the